Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi Jong and here I like to talk about luxury beauty. And today we are going over a bunch of new products as well as some older products. So let's go ahead and get started. We are starting off today with my favorite primers, the Surratt Perfectioniste Primer for my face. Again, if you haven't heard me talk about this is my favorite primer because it offers blurring. It extends the wear of foundation, is lightweight, you don't feel anything, and it mattifies your skin without making it dry. So if you're somebody who likes to pile on the sunscreen like I do, but you don't like the feeling that your skin has after having all of that greasy sunscreen on there, this cancels it out without actually disturbing your sunscreen. So absolutely love it. And yeah, it's my favorite face primer. For eye primer, I love the Viseart Seamless Eye Primer. This goes on, it feels like a silicone primer. And I mean, it is a silicone primer. So it goes on very smoothly. It feels comfortable on the lids. It's very thin, but it does prolong the wear of eyeshadow for me. And that's what's important. It also makes things go on very easily, like in the crease and so forth. So absolutely love the eye primer as well. For base today, I am using the Chanel No. 1 de Chanel foundation in BD01. And I really like this one. If you're looking for a light, medium weight coverage foundation that has some like inherent dewiness without being ultra dewy, this is a really good one in my opinion. So it goes on nicely, and it's a really nice foundation. They've got a lot of different shades in the range. There are fragrances to all, like pretty much all Chanel products have fragrance. I think like everything except the eye creams. So, just keep that in mind. And I'm using one of my favorite foundation brushes. I have two of these. This is the Kyoto. It used to be the Fupa 03, but now it is the F04 brush. And it's a synthetic foundation brush. So I skipped concealer today. I just added a little extra foundation under the eyes there. And you can see how much coverage you get from this foundation. I'm covering the little red spot on my nose there, and you can see how much coverage you can kind of get with this without too much effort. I could cover it better if I really wanted to, but honestly, it's been a not so great day so far. So honestly, I just don't want to deal with it. Next up for the eyes, we're going in with two of Chanel's single eyeshadows. So these are the Ombre Premier Longwear Powder eyeshadows. I believe these were holiday 2020. And I have 926 or Blanc. I am using the Suku L brush to push that all over the lid, in the crease, and so forth. You can see that it's a very soft, shimmery color, and using a fluffier brush like this gives me an even lighter layer of this. And then following that, on the outer half of the mobile lid, I'm using 928 Queer Brun. And again, I'm using the same brush and I'm kind of patting this in so I get just a little bit more of that depth, but this is a really deep color, so I don't want too much, which is one of the reasons also that I put the lighter shadow on the bottom, so I have a base and I don't have like too much pigment like adhering directly to the eyelid, so it's a little bit easier to disperse and blend those two shades together. So now I'm just using the L brush here with absolutely no product. I wiped it on my microfiber cloth to just kind of blend the edges of these two shades. And following that, we are taking a look at the new Victoria Beckham Instant Brightening Waterline Pencil. So this comes in one shade, neutral, and it is intended for use on the waterline. So you can see I'm putting it directly on there. It goes on very smoothly, very creamy. We will look at some comparisons after we kind of go through everything here. And I have to say, this pencil, like most things on the waterline, it's not going to really stick to the part that is constantly wet, but it does hold up fairly well right along the edge of the waterline. And I haven't had it on super long, so I will definitely leave a note pinned up here to the top and in the description box with the wear on this and how it performs. This is my first time using this one today. So a little bit about my terrible day so far. Our freezer in the garage, our second freezer, was left ajar. I'm not sure how that happened or if the seal's breaking or what, but I had bought like 3 boxes of popsicles that all melted, ran out through the seams all over the garage floor into the refrigerator, lost a bunch of food. I've been like cooking up what I can salvage. So it's been a really long, messy day. So yeah, so moving on to finish off the eyes, I'm using the Victoria Beckham Satin Kaujal Liner in Cocoa. I really love her kaujal liners. I don't personally find that they work well for me on the waterline. They can get a little messy or even disappear at times, but I love to use these on the upper lash line or even on the lower lash line, just not too close to the waterline, where I then smudge it. And once I smudge it, it really sets and stays for me throughout the day. So I really like it for that smudged out look. If you're looking for something more precise or a thinner line, this really isn't the best product for it. These are just so incredibly creamy that, it's hard to get a super fine point on it also. So they are creamy enough though, if you want to use like a thinner liner brush, you can definitely do that with these because they are creamy enough that you can run the brush tip over it and get plenty of product that goes on easily. So fantastic eyeliners in my opinion, just depends on what your purpose for them is. And then I use the Surratt eyelash curler and the Sisley So Stretch mascara in brown. And I was actually kind of careful not to get too much of the mascara on the tips. I was watching something from Violette FR, who is the creative director for Guerlain. And she had mentioned how she doesn't put mascara on the tips to give it a more natural look. And it also, you get a lot of clumping at the tips. So if you're looking for something that is not showing too much clumping and you're not working too much on lengthening, if you really want those super long lashes, that's a different story. But if you're going for a more natural, non-clumping look, then keeping the mascara more so just towards the middle of your lashes, the base in the middle, and not as much on the tips was kind of her little trick for that. So I've been testing that out and I like that technique. So it's a really great daytime technique in my opinion. So for my brows, I didn't show this, but I did use the Surratt Expressioniste Brow Pomade in light brown. Just went over those quickly. Now for the cheeks today, I'm testing out the Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Sun-Kissed Glow Cream Bronzer, and I got shade 1 Fair Pale. So I've mentioned before that I had been told originally that the shades would match up with the powder bronzers. That really doesn't seem to be true. Shade 1 is definitely deeper, more so like shade 2 in the powder bronzers. So I'm glad I ended up getting shade 1 because I really wasn't sure based on that information I received. And I have to say, this is my first time using it. I will have a more extensive review on this, along with comparisons with other bronzers and so forth, and final thoughts on this in a few days. But I'm really enjoying the way this goes on. And it's creamy, but it's, so it goes on nicely, but it's not so creamy that it feels like dewy or greasy on the skin. And you really only need a little bit. So going into this bronzer with my brush, you actually can't even tell that I've used a bronzer. Like it looks brand new, even after touching it with the brush, because you really need such a small amount of product. So while I'm applying this, I'm using the 2 Sonia G Hinoki brushes to show you what the differences are, because both of these brushes can be used very easily for cheek products, bronzers and blushes and highlights, powder and so forth. So I kind of wanted to show you how it performs with cream and powder products all in one look. So I use on the right side of my cheek, or right side of my face, I use the larger brush, and the left side I used the smaller angled brush. And you can see that they both put the product on very nicely. For the cream bronzer, I find if you're looking to put it in a very targeted area, the smaller angle brush puts that on very well, but I really prefer the larger brush for kind of buffing it in, smoothing out those edges and so forth. It just feels a little bit more comfortable, and I feel like it's a little bit less work. Whereas the smaller brush is so precise that in order to get those blurred edges, I feel like it just takes a little bit more work and effort. Also, it's a wispier brush. So I feel like with the cream product, the larger one is just a little bit more efficient. So that would be my preference with the cream bronzer. Overall, I have to say I'm really enjoying the formula of the cream bronzer a lot. And again, I will have a more extensive review in a few days. So let's move on to the rest of the cheeks. Now, as I mentioned, I really want to highlight what these brushes can do. So I wanted to go in with a powder product for blush as well. So I chose one of my favorites of the year. This is the Tom Ford Soleil Eclat Nude palette. And I mixed both shades together. And as you can see, as I'm rubbing the brushes on these, I do dab them on my microfiber cloth before putting them on my face. So I'm dabbing off excess product. So you can see that the larger brush obviously picks up it picks up a lot of product very easily. It's a little bit more efficient at that, but again, it's a larger, more dense brush. So totally makes sense, right? It puts the product on very nicely. Obviously, you're working with a larger brush, so if you want to be a little bit more precise, you probably want to use the more narrow side of the brush and, you know, be a little bit more cautious with application. I kind of wanted to put it kind of all over, so I kind of buffed that in nicely. And then with the smaller brush, you can see, you know, it's wispier, so it doesn't pick up the product quite as easily as the larger brush. And I really had to go in there a couple times to get the color there. And it doesn't have the same appearance on the cheek as it does with the larger Hinoki brush, because you're keeping the color kind of more concentrated in a specific area. So again, you're not really buffing it into the skin like you are with the other. So they are going to give a slight difference in application on the cheek, but both of them work very well with powder products. And again, this is undyed Psycho Goat Hair, which is one of the highest, it's pretty much your highest common level of undyed goat hair, or goat hair in general, which can be used for creams and powders and liquid products, but it's very, very soft. So it's a fantastic brush fiber, my favorite actually. And yeah, I think these brushes are great. Now you can also use these brushes for highlighter. So let's take a look. So for highlight, I decided to use the Laura Mercier Rose Glow highlighter. This came out last summer as a limited edition product. The collection was so popular that she has actually just made the collection permanent and added some new products to it. So she added some blushes, and in this Rose Glow collection, there's the highlighter, there are the new blushes, and there are some caviar eye sticks. And the whole idea behind the Rose Glow line is that it has some sort of property, I'm not sure exactly how they do this, that it is supposed to be self-adjusting on your skin to balance warm and cool tones. So it's, you know, supposed to be able to work then for anybody who is warm tone or cool tone, because it will self-adjust your skin and give you that right tone on your skin. So I have a hard time seeing that with a highlighter. So I'm very anxious to try eager to try the blushes in this collection. So I did order one of those to kind of test out and see how that goes. And but I like this highlighter on its own. It's definitely one that I come back to periodically. It's a really nice, soft, you know, kind of like a rosy champagne kind of shade. And I think it has a really nice subtle shimmer. So on one side, I used just the edge of the larger Hinoki brush, and you can see that put it on nicely, but it's really hard to be targeted with that. So this brush isn't ideal for highlight, but in a pinch, you can use it that way. However, the smaller angled brush works great for highlight. I love this brush for highlight, really love it for detail work. I also used the Surratt Eclatant. It's a Diaphon loose powder. I use that under the eyes as well to just kind of sit there and get a little bit of brightening. And this brush works great for that as well. So I think overall, you know, obviously based on the sizes, the larger brush is best for larger areas, buffing things in and so forth. Really like it with cream products. And the smaller one, I personally like it for smaller detail work, and it can be definitely used with cream products or powder products, but I do tend to prefer wispier brushes like this with powder products. So unless you know, a liquid versus a cream, you know, something a little bit looser, like a serum style blush or something like that. You know, that's kind of more my preference for this style. So overall, I have to say, I really like the brushes, really like the highlight as well. Moving on to our last new product of the day. This is the Victoria Beckham Posh Gloss. So she's had the Posh Glosses out for a while. I've actually picked up the clear one also. I haven't tried that one yet, but these are supposed to be a high intense shiny gloss that's not sticky. It's supposed to have some like lip care benefits and so forth to it. And she just released 4 new shades. So I had to pick up the shade Fizz because it looks like this really beautiful, like mauve-y pink shade. That's kind of like, I mean, like one of my favorite shades for lip products. So I definitely had to pick this up. I have to say it goes on very smoothly. It's comfortable on the lips. Definitely has that high shine finish. And it is a medium thickness, a little bit heavier coverage on the lips. So it doesn't feel like it's gonna budge. It doesn't feel oily or greasy. And yeah, that's what Fizz looks like. So let's go ahead and take a second, look at some swatches and just a few quick comparisons. All right, so let's start off with the Charlotte Tilbury bronzer. And as I mentioned, it really looks like I haven't even used this yet because you really need such a small amount of product. So let's go ahead and get a swatch of this. And just for reference, this is what the outer packaging of this looks like. And the actual box it comes in does have like a sticker, you know, the label here goes over the edge here. So you can tell if it's been tampered with unless somebody went in through the bottom. So let's take a look at this. This is shade 1, Fair Light. And you can see how that buffs out. So this is actually going to be cooler in tone. Shades 1 and 4 I believe are the 2 that are cooler in tone, and 2 and 3 are going to be a little bit warmer. So as I mentioned, I do feel like this looks more similar to the powder bronzer in 2. So this is 2. I'll show you 1 in just a second. But for comparison, this is 0.74 ounces and this is 0.56 ounces. Now the difference, that really isn't going to give you a difference in the size, but you know, cream products are heavier. So, you know, they're both large pans, probably about the same amount of product uses and so forth. The powder bronzer has a 24-month shelf life and so does the cream bronzer. So let me just take a look. And by the way, you can see the difference in the packaging here. And this is shade 1. So we have shade 1, shade 2, and the cream. So the cream is kind of like in the middle between those two, but it's actually cooler. So shade 2 here in the powder is going to be a little bit warmer than shade 1 in the cream. So let's just swatch these together real quickly. So here's 1 and 2 in the powder. 1 and 2. So you can see the difference. You can see that this is going to be a little bit warmer, but buffed out, they do look fairly similar on the skin. And yeah, so this is kind of the winner here. Just another comparison. This is the $3.95 Soleil Tan Deep Bronzer from Chanel that came out last summer. I'm just going to put this right across the top. And this is a cream bronzer. And to say texturally, this feels like oilier, a little bit thinner than the Charlotte Tilbury. And I will talk about the differences with those in a little bit more detail in the video, the next video on those. I do want to test this a little bit longer before I give final thoughts. We'll also have additional comparisons of other bronzers at that time as well. So just an up close again, we've got 1 in the powder, 1 in the cream, 2 in the powder for Charlotte Tilbury. And this is Chanel $3.95 in the Soleil Tan Deep. Just a quick swatch of what I used on my eyes. This one here is Or Blanc. And you can see it's going to be a soft golden ivory shade. And then we have the Queer Brun, Queer Brun, which is really deep. It actually has a little bit of olive in it, but it's kind of more so like a deep, cooler tone, like mossy brown. So those are the 2 that I have on there together. And let's take a look at the waterline pencil from Victoria Beckham. You can see it's very creamy. It's not going to be quite as creamy as the cajoles for the eye, but as I mentioned, those don't last as well in the waterline. This is going to be definitely still super creamy, but not quite that creamy. There's a little bit more structure to it. It's going to be able to get a point a little bit. You can get a sharper point more easily with this. And just a couple comparisons. This is the Chanel Le Cran Col in 69 Claire. Put that right below. And you can see that this is going to be deeper and peachier. As for creaminess, I feel like they're fairly similar in creaminess. The Victoria Beckham might be slightly creamier. And here's the Chantecaille Brightening Eye Kajal in Nude. And you can see the difference. Let's put this right here. This is going to be a little bit peachier, whereas the Victoria Beckham's a little bit more yellow. And as for creaminess, I feel like the three of these are all pretty similar. The Victoria Beckham is slightly creamier than the other two, but again, it's also my newest, although the Chanel is very new. Like I just got this like a month ago or something. So yeah, I feel like they're all pretty comparable in creaminess. Just some more swatches of what we used. So I used the Cle de Peau together. So we'll just do a swatch of those mixed together. And it gives you this really nice, kind of like a rosy peach shade. And there's like a sheen to it, but no glitter. So it is a little bit luminizing. We have the Rose Glow highlighter. And here's that. I think it's a really pretty, nice, subtle luminosity. And yeah, you don't need a lot. And then here is the lip gloss in Fizz. Let's see here if we can put this right here. So you can see it's a really beautiful rose with a touch of mauve in it. Just my closest lip gloss comparisons. This is the Givenchy Liquid Lip Balm in 210. And I love this. This is a go-to shade for me. You can see that the tones are very similar. This is going to be slightly more neutral, not quite as cool as the Victoria Beckham, but they are fairly similar colors. We also have one of the Dior Addict glosses. This is in 785 Diorama. Love this shade. I have purchased this a couple times actually. It's a go-to shade for me. Again, you can see it's fairly similar in color. And I have to say, it might be slightly more neutral, but it really just seems like a more sheer version of it, essentially. This here is the Ilia Balmy Gloss Tinted Lip Oil in Maybe Violet. This is going to be cooler. This is going to have a little bit more purple in it. But I thought that was a good comparison. You could see this definitely looks more pink in comparison. And then my last one here is Lisa Eldridge in Petal. And let's put this one right up here. You can see that this is definitely going to be warmer. There's more peach in it. So I hope this was helpful. I will definitely have a wear update down below in the description box and pinned up here for everything and how it performed throughout the day. But I have to say, overall, I am happy with the new items so far. The jury is still out on the performance of the Victoria Beckham waterline pencil, but I think the color is nice. Really like the gloss. I think the gloss is really comfortable. Really enjoying the Charlotte Tilbury bronzer and the Sonia G brushes. I mean, I'm gonna have to check and see if they're still available. I think I really want to get a second set. So they are really a nice set. Okay, so before we get these all dirty again, I do want to take a nice clean look at the Sonia G Hinoki set. So these are gorgeous. I mean, look at the handles. You have the cranes, Japan, Hinoki. So that is written on both brushes. You know, the Hinoki refers to the wood in the handle. This is a type of Japanese cedar, One of the things that I really love about these brushes are actually the ferrules. So these have already been washed and dried, by the way. So they have bloomed since I first got them. You know, I always like to wash my brushes as soon as I get them. It's not necessary for most brushes, but I do like to do that just for my own peace of mind. But one of my favorite things are the curvatures that we have here on the ferrules. So I think this is aesthetically pleasing, but this also has a purpose. See how it goes a little bit higher in the center? That's going to make this center portion feel a little bit more dense, because essentially you're shortening the hair length here, technically, from where it's fastened here, which will make this a little bit stiffer here in the center than it is on the sides. So it is going to give it a slightly, you know, a little bit of a different texture on the skin. So you can feel going this way that this center section has just a little bit more stiffness to the bristles compared to the edges, which makes the brush very versatile because you have parts that are more wispy. If you want to use it like this, you can use this as, you know, a highlighting brush and so forth. You can put something on very softly, but you can also kind of buff something in gently, softly with this. It's not like the best buffer brush or anything like that, but it will have more of a buffing action if you're using the center portion, and you can put in a firmer product that way as well. Something that maybe doesn't pick up necessarily quite as easily or disperse from the brush as easily as certain powders, then this center portion will be a little bit more key in that. Now on this one, you can see our curvature here. I just think this is just gorgeous. I love the attention to detail here. But again, the same thing. If this had been a flat ferrule going all the way around, then this would be a lot wispier here. You wouldn't have quite as much control on the tip. But because of the way that this curves up, you know, even though you have this slanted brush, and yes, it is still going to be wispier up here than it is down here because of the hair lengths and everything. But essentially you're kind of keeping them almost a balanced length, even though it is a slanted brush, which gives you the action of a slanted brush combined with the action of something that would be more of a flat edge. So because this still has the ability to bend down so much, you've got a little bit of extra wispiness there as well. But again, this is going to change the function just a little bit from what you would typically expect from a slanted brush. And it's going to give you a little bit more control with this brush than you would have if this ferrule had been cut flat here. Not sure, not flat, but you know what I mean. Like if it was consistently round here instead of having this curvature. So just a few notes with that. And then let's just take a look at a few comparisons before we go ahead and get these dirty again. So starting with the bigger brush, this here is the Refer 24. This is one of my favorite brushes, but you can see again that yes, our brush head size and shape is fairly similar, but this is going to be a lot more dense. You can see it's thicker here in the ferrule. We also have more of this flat edge going around instead, and the bristles are a little bit shorter. So this will have a denser feeling on the skin. This is going to be domed in about the same angle and so forth as the Hinoki brush as well. But again, this is just going to be a bit thicker and more dense overall. So the function of this, for me, I personally love this for like bronzers and things like that. This also works for blushes, but it's got a little bit stronger of a buffing action than you would get from the Sonia G. Another one here, mine dried next to something, so it's a little bit misshapen at the moment, but this is my Refer number 5, and you can see the shape here. The Refer is going to be smaller. The actual height, though, is going to be comparable. But again, our shape is going to be fairly different. This is almost a fan shape because of the way this is put in here in comparison. So you can see this is going to have more of that wispy action, and compared to this one where, as we mentioned, this curvature up here allows it to be a little bit stiffer in the center. Just to look at a few fan brushes, this is the Sonia G Sculpt F04, which is an angled fan brush. And again, we've got a curvature up here as well, giving you a little bit more density here in the center. And this longer end here on the side is giving you more wispiness. Just for size and shape comparisons, you can see this is going to be a lot deeper, essentially, going this way. I haven't used this for a while, so it's been pressed up against something else. So this was the Sculpt Dew. And you can see here that the actual shape is fairly similar. This is, you know, the Sculpt 2 is, it's got a little bit more angling out. You can see that everything's gathered a little bit more tightly here. Here our ferrule is going to be a little bit more narrow, but you can see the actual shape of the brush head is fairly similar. This is going to be thinner than the Hinoki. And the last one, this is the Worker Fan from Sonia G. So you can see that this is going to be a little bit bigger. It's, again, thinner overall here, but it's going to be a little bit wider this way. And we do have, you know, a ferrule that gives it a little bit more stiffness up here. But because this is, it's looser, thinner, wispier in general, it's not going to give you as much control as the Hinoki brush. So here's how this one goes. And this one. Both great brushes, but I do think that they are a little bit different. I personally prefer something a little bit wider like this. So I have to say I am not a huge fan brush person, so I neglect my fan brushes for the most part. There are a few fan brushes that I use frequently. Unfortunately, those really aren't them. All right, so this is a Chikuhodo F04, which is an angled brush. This is one of my favorites. It's incredibly soft. This one here is fox hair. So it's going to be finer, softer. It's also going to have a little bit more flexibility in the hair and a little bit less kickback than the Hinoki brushes. So you can see here that this is obviously going to be a lot thinner, a lot smaller overall compared to the F04. You can see how this goes on. Again, it's got more of a wispy texture, and you can see how this compares as well. Obviously, the Hinoki brush, the larger one, is not slanted, but we do have a pretty similar width of fibers here and length of the hairs. However, this is going to give you a denser feeling on the skin than the F04. This is the Surratt sculpting brush. So you can see that they have a very similar shape, but this smaller Hinoki is just a much smaller version, essentially. And the sculpting brush, I believe this is goat and squirrel mixed, whereas this is just going to be your Psycho goat. And this is how it performs compared to the sculpting brush. They actually do feel pretty similarly on the skin with the amount of kickback and so forth, but the difference is this is like half the size. This is the Spectrum Katie Jane U04 brush, which you can see has stippling fibers here. This is a synthetic brush, but again, our shape of the majority of the fibers here is going to be fairly similar, as so is the size. This, because of the stippling fibers, is definitely going to be a lot wispier. And these synthetic hairs, I mean, you can look at the kickback here in comparison. There is a stronger kickback with, or bounce back with the Sonia G than there is with the Spectrum, making this just like, it's going to be giving you like a softer application essentially, whereas this has just a little bit more structure, more body to it. And last up, this is the Sonia G Detail Pro. And obviously shapes and sizes are fairly different. The Detail Pro is much smaller, but just like you can use this portion for like a highlight or something, I feel like if you were to just kind of use this portion, the longer tip, it performs pretty similar. So if you're going to use a brush like this on the side, I feel like you get pretty much the same effect on the skin as you do with this Detail Pro. But having this whole brush as a whole gives you a little bit more functionality. So those are kind of my best comparisons. I do feel like these brushes are unique enough to add to my collection. And honestly, I've been loving these. So I'm thinking of picking up a second set before they sell out. And if you're looking for like a nice gift, I mean, you could even get these and save them for a Christmas gift, but they're special because not only are they limited edition, but I think the handles are super nice, the ferrules are great, and they're incredibly soft and great quality. So please let me know what you think of everything that I featured here today. Let me know if you've tried anything, what your thoughts are, and I can't wait to see you next time. So have a great day, and I'll see you soon.